Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Conversations with Carrie and Dani. So while we were getting ready and setting up the Zoom thingy and stuff to do this, Carrie and I were chatting, and it was so frustrating because suddenly I thought, no, no, stop speaking. We should be recording this. Goodness me, life is weird sometimes. So what actually came up, I wrote down what you said, Carrie, really quickly, was we were talking. It came up about what we believe now as opposed to what we used to believe. And we've talked a lot about what we used to believe, but not where we've landed now and maybe where we hope to land in the future. And Carrie, you mentioned that word, that big scary word, expectation. Expectation. So how we expected to interact and what does God expect of us? What? So I'm going to come back to that and just leave you now, if you can remember what you were going to say till I said don't say it, and see if you can remember now and say it again.
Well, and I think we were always raised with a lot of expectations as Seventh-day Adventist little kids. We were expected to act a certain way. We were expected to go to church every Sabbath. We were expected to be a member of the Pathfinder Club. We were expected to do all of these things, expected to go to church school. And now where I consider myself a Christian. Sometimes I prefer to say Christ follower or follower of Jesus, because in the current political climate in the United States, sometimes Christianity has a little bit of a negative connotation. But I'm still, I'm a Christian. I don't want that to be taken away from me, you know. And I think sometimes, there's a lot of content out there about deconstruction and reconstruction of your faith and where you end up and how that looks. And I will say, I, like most people, I think we should always be in an exploration stage or figuring out what we believe. Somebody had said that without doubt, there is no faith. Um, and I think that it's now I will say I'm confident. I do believe there is a God. I do believe that Jesus died for our sins, making it so that we are saved. I am much more assured of my salvation than I was when I was an Adventist, I believe, because I don't see there as being conditions on it or as many conditions as there were. Um, so it's and when it's more of a bare bones Christianity, you know, not micromanaging how we live our lives. Um, and I think that that's important to where we're able to help make decisions as how we're living our life, not so much as to what does the church expect us to do, but what does Jesus want from us in order to help those around us and to make our world a better place. Loving our neighbor, and all of that stuff. Now, what that looks like on the day to day, that can depend on the day, you know, depends on what you're doing, who you're interacting with. Um, yeah, I mean, it's just I think it's just this bare bones Christianity. Now I attend a fairly large, I suppose you could call it a mega church. It's a multi-site, um, non-denominational church, but the site we go to is about 200 people. Um, but what I appreciate about, and we're pretty active in ministry there. My husband runs a couple of different men's discipleship groups. We're running a marriage ministry. Um, I help out with the kids church with the little elementary kids, and so we're really active. However, it is okay that I express to my friends or to the people in our groups that I don't really know exactly what I believe. Right, I have not completely formulated my belief system back up again, and nobody seems to care. I feel like if I would have said that, in church 10 years ago, people would be, Carrie doesn't know what she believes.
Well, yeah, as a pastor's wife, you're expected to not only know what you believe, but from birth, I was told as an Adventist, you need to be able to defend your faith.
Defend your faith. Yep. Yep. Defend it. And that is it's definitely a huge paradigm shift. And I think in our last episode we talked about, well, maybe sometimes I don't know which conversations are on video and which ones are just our conversations we have before and after.
Well, give it a go.
um but it's allowed I for me to approach life and other people in a much less judgy fashion. It's helped our marriage. It helps my interaction with my kids and other people, where I'm not constantly judging and making sure they're measuring up to this standard that's in my head. And it's a big
Well,
paradigm shift. It's much more happy.
yeah.
It's much more content.
Even without using the word judging, okay,
Yeah.
because that's a word that scares people. And it's the truth. That's what it really is. I'm glad you used that word because that's straight down the line what it is. But I remember it was sort of presented more from the New Testament as in you should keep an eye on your brother. And if you see him sinning, you should talk to him because it's our job to restore them,
Mm-hmm.
right relationships. So I grew up in a culture where really judging was encouraged under the guise of and helping move people to, oh my goodness, I was going to say to a more perfect life.
Well, that was the understanding.
Yeah, what's the context?
It was the context. It was part of the culture that we were supposed to bring everybody else up to our level.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that when we would look around in church and see those that have fallen short, you know, and we were the worst with those that were sitting in the pew with us. I will say that I was, and Jesus said that people know you are my disciples if you love one another. I don't Not sure very many of those people got that memo, exactly what that
Yeah.
meant.
So interesting that you talk about it from that side of things because I was taught the side of things that you're sharing, but I always felt like I was on the other side of things. So I was absolutely guilty of my fair share of judging.
Hmm.
But I always felt like I was on the wrong end of everybody else's. I was always the slightly inappropriately dressed, scruffy, outspoken, odd person.
Hmm. That would ask the questions in Sabbath school that made everybody uncomfortable.
Yeah, or just not turn up to Sabbath school full stop because it was boring.
And
That
it's
was
awful
highly
early
inappropriate.
too,
Um,
you know.
well, I can't even complain about that because a lot of my life I spent in country churches where Sabbath school didn't even start till 10 o'clock because it was made so the farmers could get there.
Hmm. Yeah.
I just thought it was boring.
Yeah, it was. I mean, if you didn't have a good leader, Sabbath school was very boring, extremely boring.
Well, they didn't even study the Bible. They studied the little pre-planned, like you said, a couple of weeks back, lesson pamphlet made on quite a lot of Ellen White quotes, and that was all boring. But
Yeah.
I made some notes while you were talking. If you saw me looking down, and it's because I was making some notes. I didn't forget some of the things that you said, because so I could share my thoughts on the same
Mhm.
stuff. So I thought it was interesting. I actually didn't, and I still don't a lot of the time. I won't call myself a Christian. So you didn't want to lose that label. I'd wait to give it up even long before I officially handed my resignation and left the Adventist church.
Hmm.
And people would say, "Oh, are you a Christian?" And I'd know they'd be heading then towards what church do you go to and stuff. And I'd always say no.
Hmm.
I'd say, "No, I'm not a Christian, but I am friends with God."
It's a good one. I like that.
And they'd go, "Huh? Huh?" And I found it opened the doors for a lot of really interesting conversations. Um, and again, probably it's just my little, niggly attitude towards some of the stuff and to not wanting to be put in a box. I hate being shoved in a little box and people thinking that they know all about you because you're like this. So yeah, it was
Yeah,
probably part of that. And you that word deconstruction, that was interesting because it's a real buzzword at the moment.
it's huge. Yeah.
And I don't like it either, Carrie. It's comfy in my seat. I don't like it either. Um, and I don't know if I've said this before in one of our talking to you on video or not. I really don't like deconstruction at all. And I prefer to look of it as disentangling is the word that I like.
Ooh, I like that word better.
Deconstruction to me is that deconstruction is about smashing stuff up and taking it away and just I like the word disentangling, and I must have read it somewhere or someone said it, and I've just picked it up and kept it as my own little like mantra. And so I like to tell people that I am disentangling the meaningful parts of my spiritual life out of an abusive system.
Mm,
Because to me, that's what it's about.
yeah,
I don't want to just chuck. It would be so easy to chuck everything out and not even believe that God exists. And I know
yeah.
people that have done that, and it would be really easy to just toss it all out and try and start again. But I can't really start again
Mm-mm.
because I can't pretend I don't know and haven't lived through everything I know. And that's so yeah, so it's yeah, to me, I've just tried to disentangle, and I can't even say pull out or whatever because it really is. Oh my goodness. Have you seen the paintings? The paintings. I haven't got a picture here. I do paint pouring sometimes, and you just pour all
Oh,
the
yep.
colors on, you tip the canvas around,
Hmm.
and you get this really cool. So you get places where the blue and the green mix together, and you get lovely shades of aqua and yellows,
Yep.
and you get all these amazing colors where the colors all blend. And it's really just it's so beautiful. And so if I think of it like that, I can't look at that and go, right, I'm just going to pull out the red bits
Hmm.
because there's places where the red has mixed with another color and it's become orange
Hmm.
or it's become purple because it's mixed with the blue. And
Hmm.
so it's created a whole new thing all of its own. And to pull the red out is to lose all those other beautiful pieces as well. And I sort of feel a little that and especially for the first 8 or 9 months, it was just I was exhausted permanently all the time. And it was a little bit like that. I felt like I was trying to pull out pieces that I couldn't pull out because they'd changed and they'd mixed with so much in there. Everything when you grow up, I don't know if it's the same for all, and the Adventists basically come out of the evangelical movement. I don't know if it's the same for people coming out of all high control religions and stuff, but yeah, it's really hard even to disentangle the meaningful parts when it's all entangled into other things as well. It was really hard. And probably a really good way of looking at that too is you mentioned one of my bugbears, okay, which is the whole love your neighbor. How does that look, is what you said. So I'm going
Yeah.
to answer your question. How does that look? That's one that I'd love to hear what you think about this because that was one that growing up in Adventist I really struggled with because I was sort of the unspoken things that you know exist, but they're not spoken like dead clear for everybody, except sometimes they are spoken. And so it was a spoken but slightly unspoken thing in the Adventist culture that I was in was that they'd actually say, I've heard it said, you have to love your neighbor, but love's an action. You don't have to like them.
Hmm.
Love's an action, love's a decision. So you have to love them. You don't actually have to like them. And so I like to remember that being said quite a bit. So I sort of grew up with this split. Like I grew
Hmm.
up with an emotional split and this like disconnect. And I can act like I love somebody even when I don't love them.
I
But that's not the point. The point is I want to be in a relationship with Jesus where I'm changed enough on the inside that I actually do like them.
hmm I
And
think
so
it's well, and I think people are scared to like somebody who maybe doesn't believe exactly like them or live exactly like them. But people know if you're faking it, you know? Um, I've in what I do for a living, I interact with a lot of people, and I genuinely like 99% of the people that I deal with every day, because there's always something that you can find in common, always something that you
Yeah.
can, unless they're truly just mean people. And honestly, the ones that I dislike the most, like the ones I am less likely to like, are the churchy ones.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And I think
Yeah.
that's and I think we always were taught, whether it was like you said, spoken or unspoken, to keep people at a distance that could potentially threaten your faith.
Yeah, actually that's really well put, Gary. That's a lot of what it was like. Because
Yeah,
by beholding you become changed.
right. And it was because, and so that was part of, controlling what we read, who we interact with. There was always enough books at the Adventist Book Center that we could get that to talk about Christianity and stuff, that we didn't need to look at other things, and I found it very refreshing. Recently, I'll read a book that I don't agree with a lot of what, some of what's in there, but I'm still going to read it because there's something there I can learn.
Yeah.
There's something we can learn from people and that maybe don't believe exactly like we do. And when you had mentioned like you don't want, your beliefs being put in a box or anything. And I don't want to put my beliefs, or I don't want to put God in a box. And I think that's what Adventism does, is it puts God in a box and said, this is exactly what God is going to do in the future. This is exactly what God expects of us. This is exactly how we're supposed to behave, the things we're supposed to say and do. And that's high control religion at its core, is we are trying to control God.
Oh my goodness. That's what you said in the beginning. That's what you said. I forgot that you said it till you said it again now. When you were talking it right at the beginning of this conversation about all the expectations. This is how you're expected to relate to God. This is what the church tells you. You're expected to do all these things, and you listed them off. There was one other thing that I thought you missed off the list, and that is we were told that if you meet all those expectations, then you can expect something in return.
It's very transactional.
I was going to say there's such a transactional view of things, and life's not like that. And that was one of the big struggles I had building some of the friendships in the church, was that I mean, lovely, lovely people, but they didn't even know they were being transactional. They didn't even know they were doing nice things sometimes. And you'd hear them saying, "Oh, I'll do blah blah blah," and then they'll owe me a favor and joking about it and things. And it made me so angry because I don't see things like that.
Well, and you were there, they were earning the stars in their crown.
Um, I mean, it'd be easy 30 years ago that I was in the States, and that was one of the big changing points. And I in the States, and I went to a whole pile of live lectures at whichever church it was in California that Cloud and Townsend, two famous Christian psychologists, were
Mhm.
talking at. Better known for writing the Boundaries books and things,
Yep.
but to listen to them live is so much better. And that's one of the things they said, and I remember it was incredible. They said, it's not a gift. If it's, your time, your energy, your thoughts, the words you speak, anything that you literally gift, none of it is actually a gift. If at any point in the future you're going to think, they owe me something. If I'd known they were going to do this, I wouldn't have done it. If next week you're going to be resentful and think, oh my goodness, actually, I'm really annoyed I didn't get my dishes done. I spent that much time on the phone with someone. Then what you gave them wasn't a gift. And if you're
Yeah.
going to actually, I can remember them saying, if you're actually going to feel resentful, annoyed, or irritated that you did, said, or gifted something, don't do it because it's not a gift, it's something with strings attached.
Yeah.
And I can remember at that point in time going through a phase where I said no to everything for a little while because I was never allowed to say no growing up in the Adventist church. It's your
Hmm.
Christian duty to, Galatians, bear one another's burdens and all that stuff. It's like your Christian duty. And so, yeah, I said no after hearing these guys, and they talked about and preached from Galatians, and we can come back to that sometime if you want, about how the church has taught us the wrong story.
Hmm.
And yes, I said no to everything for a long time until I could say yes
Yes.
and mean it and not worry about any of those other things. It was just
Yep.
it was an amazing moment.
I'm reading through boundaries for one of my groups right now. And it was like, I thought I had read it before. I don't know if I have, but I mean, I had a friend that she just had to tell me no on something that was pretty big. And it was something that a project that her and I were going to do together. And she said, "I'm sorry, I just don't feel like I can do it right now. I'm overextended myself." And I said, "That's absolutely fine." I said, "I am proud of you for
Mm.
standing, drawing that boundary so you can keep yourself physically and emotionally healthy." And she was just shocked that I was so gracious about it. I'm like, you got to keep yourself healthy. I get it, and this was a long way away kind of thing, and it wasn't, so she was, and I'm like, yeah, of course I'm going to be kind about that. I don't want you to compromise your own health to do such a big project, so that's the if and I think in the boundary it was something that says, if you an internal no is never an external yes, or something to that effect.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing. And there's the boundaries and all of that. And growing up in a denomination that was full of people pleasers, it's so that's one of my big disentanglings right now. And I do love that word of disentangling. I picture a box of Christmas lights that somebody just tossed in and said, "Forget it, I will deal with it. This is a next Christmas me problem." And then they open the box and they're like, "Oh man, I have got a giant mess."
Yeah.
So it's a big mess. It takes a long time to disentangle, and you might have to cut a couple of pieces of that
Yeah.
to
You know,
make it
Carrie,
work.
you said people pleasing, and I'm thinking there'll be people out there thinking, oh, I wasn't taught people pleasing in my church, blah, 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 and stuff. And I just want to give a different way to look at that in case people
Hmm.
really miss it. Okay. And so in the Adventist culture that I grew up in, people pleasing wasn't sold to us as people pleasing. It was sold to us as um
Not causing your brother to stumble.
not causing your brother to stumble. Yep.
Yep.
And the whole better to tie a millstone around your neck and die than to say something that might lead someone astray. Um and the one in Galatians about bearing one another's burdens. So
Hmm.
it's it was sold to us as a like a little religious coat that you put on.
Hmm. Yeah. A little bit of
And it gets you
martyrdom.
to heaven. Yep, yep, that's the one. I love that. A little bit of martyrdom.
Hmm.
So yeah, it was sold to us, yep, as a religious virtue.
A badge of honor.
That's the one. So it's the other side of that.
Hmm.
Um, just tiny rabbit hole, but not really. Back to the whole loving people and looking and like really caring about people and not just acting like you love them because you've been told the story of the Good Samaritan 50 million times and
Hmm.
being told that you have to act like the Samaritan regardless of how you feel. So outside of that, there was something, and it really must have been at least 30 years ago, something that town, I don't know who it was, either Cloud or Townsend, one of them said at their live lectures again, that just, it was a huge life-changing moment for me. And I remember thinking, I want that to be my motto. That's what I want to be my motto in life. And they said, basically, my memory of what they said is they said, a person is always more important than their last decision.
Mm. Hmm.
So the essence of a person, who they are, and the fact that they are human is always more important than the last choice that they made. And it can be really hard to hold that as a motto and practice it, especially if their last choice caused me some pain.
Yeah, well, and that's really so reassuring too, because and I've talked about this before, where you're like, okay, if I die in a car accident, my last thought's not going to be a righteous one, especially if I see it coming,
Yeah.
you know. And you're talking about, the essence of a person is more important than their last decision. And I think to save a life in maybe even not necessarily in a physical way, but a social way, but having a conversation with somebody, seeing their value in humanity. I'm reminded of a conversation, a medical issue that came up with my grandmother. She's passed on now. And she needed a valve replacement for her heart. And the most common and the most biocompatible for humans is a porcine valve, which is made from a pig's heart.
Yep.
And so she had been like legit. She went through a bat mitzvah. She kind of had this little Jewish Adventist thing going on here for the last several years of her life. And being Adventist as well, pork is, we got to be careful with pig's flesh. And so she asked my husband about it, and I did a little research as well. And I said, no, no, that is fine. Because the Jews believe that the most important thing is to save a life, period. So if even so for a Jewish person, it's those bits of the law, that is much more important to save that human's life than to say we're going to follow the law and not do a porcine valve, because the pig
Wow.
valve is much more likely to last longer and save their life than any other kind.
Wow. I mean, I grew up where I was married to someone way back that wasn't an Adventist, and it was, you're going to go to hell if I even touch his ham for his ham and pineapple pizza.
Mm-hmm.
I can only imagine how traumatic that was for your granny to go through that whole
Well, and I
decision
think,
process.
and she was an interesting sort. None of my family would argue with any of this. That she would. It was so cute though. As the last several years of her life, anything my husband told her was okay, absolutely okay. There was a couple of times where she was kind of dragging her feet on making a decision, and I said, Terry says you should do this. Oh, okay.
That's so cute.
So he told her, he said, no, that's fine. You need to do that. If that's what the doctor says is the best thing for you, that's what you need to do.
The crazy thing is that I grew up in a culture where saving a life wasn't always, where things weren't tempered
Mm-hmm.
with things like that. So yeah,
And I think there's so many nuances in life that we miss when we're so many big picture items that we miss if we're focused on the little tiny details
yeah,
that don't necessarily matter. Sometimes details do matter, but just with um the Jewish law, and if you want to know exactly, what the Torah and all that stuff says, you got to, ask a Jew about it. And if they say no, it's much more important to save a life, you know.
that's so cool. That's really cool.
Yeah. And I think I did a Google search on what do Jews feel about valves made from pig. They're like, yeah, it saves your life. Do it. So it's that not micromanaging life. I think getting back to what the bare bones Christianity gives us, the flexibility to really live, and if somebody is in need, buy them groceries on Saturday, or
Done
all of
that.
these things where that's the nuances that should not get in the way of doing the Lord's work.
It's it's crazy now. At the time when, like way back when I was living in it, it wasn't. But it's crazy now to think that God gave us free will and common sense, but told us not to use it.
Yep. Exactly.
So you're talking about bare bones Christianity and, stuff like that. I suddenly thought, yeah, God didn't give us common sense and free will and then tell us not to use it. Here, have all these things, but if you use any of them, you're going to go to hell. Here's the little list here of how to get to heaven.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Yeah. And I think that's and sometimes living a life of, as you said, a friend of God can look a little bit differently depending on the person, depending on your circumstances. You know, what has the Lord gifted you with as far as gifts, meaning, you know, monetarily, socially, talents that you might have, and how are you expected to use that? And that's, you know, hoping that you're going to get you get clear direction from God exactly how to do that. And growing up and being in the Adventist church, you know, as far as like stewardship, monetary, you know, money wise, you're always expected to give whatever money you have. You got your 10%, it's got to go to the church. Any extra that goes to the church. You didn't have the freedom to say, hey, you know what? I've got an extra $100 this week. I want to help my neighbor with groceries, you know, or I want to give this money to the food pantry or something. If that was going to be your offering for the church, your church budget, well, actually, church budget, I think that money, if you are a member of a church, it should be expected that you do give offerings to kind of help with all of that stuff. But that required 10% tithe shouldn't, you should be able to use that money how the Lord leads you, in my
Yep.
opinion.
Yep. I understand if you're a member of a club and you use the club rooms, you pay for some upkeep.
100%. I think that's the same thing. I mean, if you're a member of a club and you've got somebody who works full time at that club presenting lectures, sermons, or cleaning, or all of that stuff, you should contribute to pay for their salary, you know, but that should be a choice, you know. There's so many, I mean, there's so many rabbit holes we could go on this one, but we don't have much time left. So
I'm resisting.
yes, I could see it. It's
I'm
very hard for you.
resisting.
No.
Resisting the rabbit holes. So I guess in the little bit of time I got left, you were talking about where you are now currently, and I
Yes.
thought I'd just briefly, I should share where I am currently. So I'm not
Yeah.
currently attending a church, which
Hmm.
you know, but the listeners won't. Um, there is one, there is one church within. There is a church within 20 minutes drive of me.
Hmm.
It's actually a beautiful church up on a cliff looking out over the Southern
Mm.
Ocean for miles.
Mm.
I think it has anywhere from 10 to 30 members, depending on who turns up. And they're locals, so I know most of them. And I just haven't gone. I don't know why. I
Are you afraid
I
of that
think
they'll
it's
look
about
at you
the,
differently?
no, I know these are people I know. I see them
Yeah,
socially quite often, a lot of them so community events and things. And I've been there a couple of times to the church, when they've had Friday night social community
sure.
dinners to get-togethers and stuff way back. But mostly, I think there's been a couple of Sundays I've thought, yep, I'll go this week. But I have over 50 years of rhythm,
Hmm.
rhythm, rhythm set into my life, and the rhythm of a Sunday just doesn't have that in it. It's really, really hard to change what my typical Sunday looks like.
On the
It,
weekends, I really have to think about what day it is. Like I can't, because we do church on Sunday morning now.
yeah, it's crazy. I do participate in an online church thing, and I
Hmm.
help schedule the people that preach at it and
Yep.
stuff. So I have quite a lot to do with that. And then I have a 3 hour ladies support group. There's
Mhm.
five of us that have been meeting for about 6 years now.
Yeah.
And we do a lot of in-depth talking and study about different things.
Hmm.
So I'm definitely not short of Christian support and
Well,
fellowship and things. It
and it's
just doesn't look like a traditional church used to
well,
look.
and that's the beauty. That's the beauty of the internet. And for those of you who don't realize, Dani lives in the middle of nowhere. You know, there's like no, I mean, for myself, I could, there's a Methodist or Wesleyan church within, I mean, when they're playing soccer in the summer, I can hear them out in the field. There's, I don't know how many churches there are within a 5 minute drive of me, probably 20 or more of all various denominations, even my former one.
There's probably only 10 or 11 houses within a 4 or 5 minute drive of me.
Yeah. So
Forget a
so
church.
so if people are like, Dani, you should get yourself to a church. She's got one to choose from that makes any sense. Really?
So yeah, I
And
mean, if I
also
want to drive 45 minutes to an hour, there's more.
yeah,
But having said that too, the other thing is, and I haven't really discussed this with you either, I suppose, Carrie, is that I'm still I'm still up and down with my health. I mean, when
yeah,
my thyroid decided to do
yeah,
crazy things, it really knocked me on my butt.
yeah.
Um, and I mean, it's one thing to say, oh, I just have, my Sunday rhythms are hard to change and I haven't managed to get to church. I mean, to put that in context, um, it might not mean anything to some people, but to my friends, it'll mean a hell of a lot.
Mhm.
I haven't sat on my horse and ridden one in 3 years. I've been too sick. By the time we shovel the poo and fill the hay nets and feed the chickens and wash the dishes and do the laundry and all the jobs that you do as an absolute basis, I
Mhm.
don't always have enough energy to go and do anything else. So if I woke up on a Sunday morning with extra energy, I would probably ride my horse before I went to church, to be honest.
Which absolutely makes sense. And you're
At least
getting
the first time.
yeah, yeah. Well, and we're down to like 2 minutes now. So um again,
That's amazing.
thanks for listening to our conversation. Hopefully you learned something, want to contribute a little something to the conversation in our comments, like and subscribe. We'd love to hear your stories, your thoughts, your opinions. Even if maybe you disagree, I suppose we'll take that with a grain of salt. No. How can you learn anything new if you unless you listen to somebody who you potentially can disagree with? But thank you everybody for your support. We'll see you again next time, and um, take care.
And if you've got something to say, come on and say it with us,
Yes,
please.
absolutely. Absolutely. We'd love to have you on. We use Zoom. It's pretty easy. So we'll talk to you all later. Bye.